Welcome back to Algebra 1 with Mrs. Carroll. And make sure you pray and have your math notebook available so you can keep notes. Alright, we're going to be talking about solving one-step equations, so this should be a review, addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. So just one-step equations. After today's lesson, you're going to learn about and apply inverse operations, solve a one-step equation, solve word problems. Alright, so you've been solving problems like the algebra questions that we're going to be talking about today for a very long time. You just may not have noticed it. A lot of times, some math books will put a blank here. And what we want to do is we want to switch that blank out for an actual variable. So instead of it saying blank minus 3 equals 10, and you have to figure out, well, what minus 3 equals 10, we have x minus 3 equals 10. Or instead of you figuring out what x times what equals 15, we have x times m equals 15, and you have to solve for it. Or 4 plus blank equals 23, what does p equal? Or the last one is a blank over 4 equals 8, so y divided by 4 equals 8. Pause the video and see if you can answer some of these. Alrighty, there's the answers down there, especially this last one if you didn't get it. We're going to be going over those today anyway, so don't fret. Alrighty, warm up. I want you to simplify this. Just simplify it to its lowest form. We've been doing simplifications of common letters and adding them together or subtracting them depending on what it is. So you're going to combine like terms. Pause the video. Alrighty, you'll notice that I have 5f minus 2f, which gives me 3f, and negative 6 plus 10 is a positive 4. So be careful of those negatives. Alrighty, so I want to talk about expressions versus equations. We've studied expressions in the last unit. When there are no equal signs, has variables and numbers, combine like terms, and distribute only. But you don't really solve for them unless you're given a value for x or y, or whatever the variable is. So it'll look like this, like 3b minus 10c plus 5. On the other hand, equations does have an equal sign. They do have variables and numbers just like an expression. They combine like terms and distributing before using what we call SAD-M, and we'll talk about that more, and then find the value of the variable. So we're actually finding an answer for that variable. Okay, so our God moment is, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. John 14:6. What is truth? So in the dictionary, in the 1828 dictionary of Webster, it says conformity to fact or reality, exact accordance with that which is, or has been, or shall be. That kind of sounds like God, doesn't it? Alrighty, so when we look at truth, we see something like 3 plus x equals 8. So 3 plus some number equals 8. And I wanted to ask you, can it be 3? Can 3 plus 3 equal 8? What about 4? Can 3 plus 4 equal 8? Why not? What if I believe with all my heart that 3 plus 6 equals 8? It doesn't, but I believe it with all my heart. I don't understand. We're living in a society right now that says your truth is your truth and my truth is my truth. And if it doesn't come from God, I don't care how much you believe in it, it's still not going to be truth. So be careful when you're out there and just make sure you go 3 plus 5 is 8. So that's the truth. Alrighty, so to find the truth, we need to take some certain steps, okay? We call that PEMDAS, order of operations. I have a little acronym that may help you remember PEMDAS, Praise Emmanuel, my deliverer and savior. And God has an order to do things as well. He says to love the Lord with all your heart, mind, and soul, and to love your neighbor as yourself. Those are his orders and how he wants us to go through life, okay? Alrighty, so here's my order of operations. We have PEMDAS. You have P, which is parentheses. You have E, that's exponents. You have M and D together, which is multiplication and division. And then you have A and S, which is addition and subtraction. I do like to put these two together like this because of the fact that if I have something like, let me get a pencil out here, if I have something like 6 divided by 2 times 3, okay, I do read left to right. So it would be 6 divided by 2, which is 3, and 3 times 3 is 9. If I multiplied these first, I would get 6, and 6 divided by 6 is 1, and that's not right. So always make sure you're doing an order of operations, but multiplication and division and addition and subtraction need to be read from left to right. Alrighty, so there it is again. I just really quickly went over that one. So equations are a statement that describes the equality. An additive inverse, this may be a new term for you, or you might have forgotten. It's basically the opposite of a number. So something like 3, the opposite of 3 is negative 3. Or the opposite of negative 3 is 3. That's called an additive inverse. Now the inverse for our operations are just that. Addition is opposite of subtraction, and subtraction's opposite is addition. Multiplication's opposite is division, and division's is multiplications. So hopefully this is this is a review. But we're here to isolate the variable. So our big method for solving our equations is to get that variable alone. We want to move everything to the other side of the equation. All right, and multiplicative inverse is basically an inverse where we have the reciprocal. We flip it upside down, and the word reciprocal just means to flip. So the reciprocal of 6 is 1 over 6, because that actually is 6 over 1. I know we don't write it that way, but that's really what it is. Or the reciprocal of 2/3 is 3/2. Okay, so here's some review for PEMDAS. I want you to pause the video and see if you can figure it out. All right, there's my answers. Hopefully you got it. I worked it step by step. So equations are kind of like scales. They have to be balanced at all times. If I have something like n plus 5 equals 6, okay, we're going to put a little equal sign here, then I should know, well, what plus 5 equals 6? Hopefully you know already in your head it's 1. You already did that in your head. But we want to show you that you can actually subtract 5 to one side of the rock and get it onto the other, and you'll end up having a balanced equation. But what you do to one side, you got to do to the other. Alrighty, so what does sad M actually mean? Well, when we're isolating the variable, we're using PEMDAS, okay? You already know this. There's PEMDAS. But we're using it backwards. And SA is addition and subtraction, and DM is multiplication and division. So sad M represents us going backwards with our PEMDAS, and that's the reason. So we're undoing it to solve X when X is in the middle of the equation. All right, so basically the variable in equation represents a number of value that we want to figure out, right? Solving an equation means finding the number of value of the variable that makes the equation true, so the two sides really are equal. The bottom line is when you solve it, you got to have it alone. So maybe it might help you to just kind of circle the X and say, okay, well, let's see. What's going on to the X? Well, we're adding 8. What's the opposite of adding? Subtracting, hence my sad M. Okay, so we would do subtraction and addition first. So in this case, I would subtract 8 to both sides, and I would get X equals 5. Alrighty, so sad M, again, as I said, you're going to addition and subtraction. That's what that SA is. D and M is division and multiplication. We're undoing it, okay? Hopefully you got those and you got an A-OK on that, and that was a review. So let's start practicing some of these wonderful things. I want you to pause the video and see if you can answer these. Answer at least 2 of them, okay? And if you don't get it, you get to rewind. All right, there's my answers. Hopefully I didn't go too fast on that one. Sometimes I do. But there's your answers, and hopefully you got them. All right, here's a whole pile of them. Good news. I want you to pick out at least 3 to 5 of them. If you missed any in the last set, you need 5 of them. If you didn't miss any, then do at least 3. Pick the ones you're not sure about how to solve. All right, pause the video. All right, there's all my answers. I want to make sure you're adding 5, you're subtracting 8. When it's like this, I am adding 1 to both sides, so that's the reason why. Because it's a negative over here. On this one here, I am subtracting 9 to both sides, okay? That's why it's a negative 14. So make sure you realize that this is a plus 9. That's a minus 1. And a minus 1, the opposite, remember the additive inverse of negative 1 is positive 1. The additive inverse of positive 9 is negative 9. All right, hopefully you got all those and they were not a big deal. So let's try one more set. This is a little bit harder, but I want you to at least pick out, especially if you missed any, I need you to pick out 5 more, okay? Pause the video. Alrighty, there they are. If you are still struggling with this, I do suggest you go back. This is the last one we do on these. So go back and get that, okay? Alrighty, so now we're going to talk about multiplication. When we deal with multiplication, we want to divide. So these are going to be, if we go multiplication, we're dividing both sides. So we're going to divide this by 3. So I'm going to show you how to do this. This goes to 1, so I have an x, and 9 divided by 3 is 3, because 3 times 3 is 9. Pause the video and see if you can answer the other 3 of them. All right, there's my answer, negative 9, negative 5, and negative 3. Hopefully you got those. All right, here is a pile more. So if you did get all 3 of them right, I want you to do 3 more. If you missed even 1 of them, you've got 5 more to do. Pause the video. Look for those that might be a little tricky and you're not sure about. Okay, there's my answers. Hopefully you got those. They weren't too bad. We're going to divide when you divide a negative. And you get a positive. Remember, if you have 2 negatives, you get a positive. On this case there, I'm dividing by a positive. So therefore, I would get a negative. All right, so that might be the only main thing that you have. This B is a little tricky. It's actually negative 1y equals 21. We divide both sides by a negative 1. And we end up with y equals negative 21. That's where that negative came from. So hopefully that didn't trip you up. All right, let's try it again. Good luck. There's one of those, by the way, that I just talked about. So if you didn't get it or you weren't sure, try it. Pause the video. All right, there's the answers. Hopefully you got this negative 14. But there's the rest of them. Hopefully they weren't too hard. All right, so what about division? When we have division as our thing, our opposite is multiplication, right? So since we are x divided by 5 equals 8, I want to know what I'm going to multiply 5 to both sides, and I'm going to get x equals 40. And I can check my work by going 40 divided by 5 does equal 8. It's a true statement. Pause the video and see if you can answer these 2. Awesome! Hopefully you got them and didn't have any trouble with them at all. Alrighty, so here's a pile of them to do. Hopefully they're not too difficult. If you missed one of those 2, again, you have to do 5. If you didn't do 3, pause the video. All right, there's my answers. Hopefully you got them. Remember, you're multiplying the denominator by all of these, and negative 4 times negative 6 is 24. 5 times negative 5 is negative 25, etc. Hopefully you got those. All right, here's another whole set just in case. If you missed any, I want 5 from you. If you didn't, you only have to do 3. All right, there's all the answers. Hopefully you got those and had no issues at all. All righty, so hopefully I got a thumbs up for that and that wasn't too fast or too bad.